The glowing man. Los Alamos, New Mexico, 1946. He was called the glowing man, not because he worked with radiation, but because after one experiment went wrong, he actually began to emit light. Louis Slotin was a top physicist working on America's post-war nuclear program. His job was to test what happened when two hemispheres of plutonium were brought dangerously close together. As in, a single slip could set off a chain reaction kind of dangerous. The core he was testing was later nicknamed the Demon Core, and for good reason. During a manual demonstration, Slotin was using a flathead screwdriver to separate the two plutonium halves. The screwdriver slipped. The halves touched. For a split second, the room was filled with an eerie blue glow. That's not poetic license, it's Cherenkov radiation. Louis Slotin had created an uncontrolled fission reaction. With his bare hands, he reflexively knocked the pieces apart, saving the others in the room. But the damage was done. In that instant, his body absorbed a lethal dose of radiation, enough to kill him within 9 days. Witnesses said he looked visibly sunburned within minutes. His hands began to blister, and over the next week his body essentially shut down, organ by organ. But what people remembered most was the glow. A faint bluish shimmer clung to his skin, likely due to Cherenkov radiation or phosphorescence from the radioactive particles, though that's still debated. Slotin's final experiment was so infamous that the U.S. government rewrote its safety protocols. After this, no one was allowed to manually handle weapons-grade plutonium ever again. Trapped inside an ATM. Corpus Christi, Texas, 2017. You've heard of, please don't shake the vending machine. But what if the vending machine is asking you for help? In 2017, a contractor in Corpus Christi, Texas, was repairing an ATM from the inside, crawling into the tiny, locked room behind the cash slot. When the door closed behind him, he realized two things. One, he was trapped. And two, he'd left his phone in the truck. No one could hear him yelling. So he did the only thing he could. He started passing handwritten notes through the ATM receipt slot. Most people thought it was a prank. A cry for help from a cash machine? That can't be real. One note read, "Please help, I'm stuck in here and I don't have my phone. Call my boss." Eventually, someone took it seriously and called the police. Officers contacted the bank manager who used an override system to open the service door. The man was dehydrated, humiliated, and otherwise completely fine. But for hours, that ATM wasn't just dispensing cash. It was begging for rescue. Death by mascot costume. Eureka, Missouri, August 1976. At theme parks, mascots are supposed to bring joy, but inside those oversized, smiling heads, it used to be a different story. Performers wore layers of foam, synthetic fur, and plastic. Temperatures inside the costume could soar past 120 degrees, especially in summer. In several tragic cases, performers collapsed mid-shift. Some were found unconscious in backstage tunnels or changing areas. One man in costume reportedly waved for help, but guests thought it was part of the act. Heatstroke sets in fast. Sweating stops. Vision blurs. Then your organs begin to shut down. In August 1976, during a record-breaking heatwave in Missouri, a teenage employee at a Six Flags theme park collapsed while playing the park's Cool Cat mascot. The temperature was over 100 degrees. He was taken to the hospital and later died of heat exhaustion. Since then, most parks have added cooling vests, shorter shifts, and mandatory rest breaks. But for a while, wearing a mascot suit wasn't just exhausting. It was deadly. Workers trapped in a chocolate vat. Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, 2022. It sounds like a cartoon, but it happened in real life, and it wasn't funny. In 2022, 2 workers at a Mars candy factory in Pennsylvania were cleaning one of the massive chocolate tanks. But somehow they slipped and fell in. As kids, we might dream of swimming in chocolate, but this wasn't Willy Wonka. The chocolate was thick, waist-deep, and nearly impossible to move through. They were trapped. Emergency crews had to cut a hole in the bottom of the vat to get them out. Both were hospitalized. One was even airlifted. The incident led to a federal investigation and a $14,000 fine for the contractors who failed to follow safety procedures. No golden ticket. Just a reminder that in real life, falling into a vat of chocolate ends in OSHA paperwork. Death by desk job. Southend, Essex, UK, 2011. In 2011, a 58-year-old tax office employee in the UK died at her desk. She had been there for hours, slumped forward, hands on the keyboard, surrounded by coworkers who didn't even notice. She was considered reliable, quiet, the kind of worker who didn't cause trouble. So when she didn't move, no one thought twice about it. They just assumed she was focused, still working. It wasn't until the cleaning crew came through that anyone realized something was wrong. The story made headlines across the UK, not because of how she died, but because of where. In an open-plan office surrounded by coworkers in the middle of a weekday. It wasn't a freak accident or a terrifying machine. It was something worse, being so unnoticed, your death looked like part of the job. Sucked into a jet engine. Mediterranean Sea, 1991. In 1991, on the deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, a Navy crewman was doing routine maintenance when he got too close to the intake of an A-6 intruder jet. A split second later, he was gone, sucked into the engine, head first. What happened next defies belief. His helmet lodged against the inside of the intake, jamming the turbine. That's the only reason he wasn't shredded on contact. When his team rushed over, they saw his boots sticking out of the intake. They shut down the engine and carefully pulled him out. Miraculously, he was still alive. He'd suffered multiple injuries but was walking again within weeks. Aviation training manuals still reference this case as a freak survival story, and a reminder that jet engines don't forgive mistakes. Forklifted in a porta-potty. Beltsville, Maryland, 2022. Construction sites are full of hazards. Exposed wiring. Falling scaffolding. But this was totally unexpected. In 2022, at a job site in Maryland, a worker stepped into a porta-potty for a quick bathroom break. What he didn't know, a forklift operator nearby had been told to move it. Without checking if anyone was inside, the operator lifted the entire unit off the ground, with the worker still in it. What followed wasn't fatal, but it was unforgettable. The forklift drove across the site with the porta-potty bouncing in the air. When it was finally set down, the dazed occupant burst out, humiliated and furious. He wasn't injured, just shaken, splattered, and probably a little traumatized. To make matters worse, the story made national news. Can you imagine? 1 minute you're taking a bathroom break. The next, you've gone viral for the worst possible reasons. Buried in the wall. Japan, 1984. He didn't show up to work, but no one thought much of it. Maybe he quit. Maybe he moved. Maybe he got tired of factory life and ran off to join a band. It wasn't until 7 years later that anyone found out the truth. In 1991, a crew renovating an abandoned factory in Saitama, Japan, broke into a hollow section of the wall and found something that shouldn't have been there. A full skeleton, wedged between pipes, still in uniform, still carrying his wallet. Turns out it was the missing worker. Investigators believe he was trying to sneak through a crawl space behind the wall, maybe to retrieve something he dropped, maybe to take a shortcut, or maybe he just needed a moment alone. He slipped, got stuck, and no one ever heard him call for help. The factory kept running for years, just feet from a hidden tomb. By the time he was found, the building had been shut down, the owners long gone. The mystery became one of Japan's most unsettling workplace legends. A man who came to work one day and somehow never left. Worker buried in concrete. Hoover Dam, 1935. It sounds like something out of a ghost story. But the rumors come up again and again. A construction worker accidentally falls into a wet concrete pour, and no one digs him out. Most versions of the tale are vague. Stories passed down from someone who knew someone on the crew. It goes something like this. In 1935, during the construction of the Hoover Dam, a worker vanished. He'd been seen on site one moment, and he was gone the next. Some say he fell into a massive concrete pour and got buried inside the structure itself. Official records don't confirm it, and the story was never verified. But a man went missing and a body was never found. It might sound like legend, but when you're pouring thousands of tons of concrete with tight deadlines and zero margin for error, it's not hard to imagine someone getting lost in the mix. Radioactive theft. Brazil, 1987. We started this list with radiation, so it's only fitting we end with it too. In 1987, 2 men in Goiânia, Brazil broke into an abandoned radiotherapy clinic. Inside, they found a strange metal cylinder and took it home, hoping to sell it for scrap. But this wasn't scrap. It was a medical device containing cesium-137, a highly radioactive isotope used in cancer treatments. When they cracked it open, the powder inside sparkled and glowed in the dark. They passed it around the neighborhood. Children played with it. One man smeared it on his skin, thinking it might be good luck. Within days, people began falling ill. Nausea, vomiting, burns, mysterious symptoms no one could explain. By the time authorities realized what had happened, it was too late. Over 200 people had been exposed to radiation. Homes had to be demolished. Tons of soil and belongings were buried in sealed containers. And tragically, 4 people died. The Goiânia accident remains one of the worst nuclear contamination events in history, all because some guy decided to take something he never should have touched. So the next time you sit through another boring workplace safety meeting, consider yourself fortunate you're not the story people whisper about in break rooms 10 years from now. Subscribe for more true stories that prove some jobs are literally deadly.